Good evening. I'm going to open the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, July 25th, 2022. Quick note, we will be starting this meeting in open session, going immediately into executive session, returning to open session no later than 6 p.m. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Okay. I move we enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss with respect of collective bargaining for all town unions, and the chair has determined that open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position, and B, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Paragraph 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and contract negotiations for non-union personnel. Town Administrator Joseph F. Powers.
Second.
Moved and seconded. A roll call vote. Julie?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
I'm an aye.
So we're going
Yeah,
downstairs?
I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting for July 25th, 2022 back to order. We started tonight's meeting at 5:15 in executive session. We adjourned around 6:04. We discussed collective bargaining for all town unions. No decisions were made. We also discussed non-union personnel contract negotiations for the Town Administrator Joseph Powers. New business A was vote to extend the town administrator's contract for 1 year. We have a little bit more paperwork to do, so we will not be doing that item tonight. We will bring it back in 2 weeks. Other than that, I think that's it. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comment and announcement. I'll go first.
I have a meeting with them.
Oh,
He
okay.
get to call me out.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
call him when it's his turn.
I just want to make a quick public comment. My name is Taylor Powell. I'm the owner of Perks in Harwichport. I spent a lot of time down there, and I just made some observations I wanted to share with you guys. Hopefully, we can help improve the situation. It's about public safety, particularly in the downtown Harwichport corridor. I guess I've witnessed a few people get hit by cars down there. Not all have been reported to the police. I've watched this happen. It's in the crosswalk. There's a telephone pole that blocks the view for pedestrians trying to cross. I think it would be in good interest of the town. I'm happy to donate if possible to this cause to put like those flashers in, so maybe when someone steps, cars know someone's gonna be there. You know, I thought that maybe if there's some flack on this, that maybe we just agree to do it during this busy summer months when there's a lot of foot traffic down there. But I would just hate for someone to potentially die or another accident happen. It's getting busy down there, and I think we need to be proactive to what's going on. And in that, with the flashers or just something, because you go to Hyannis, you go to some of these other busy towns, I see this. It's a common thing. But I think there also needs to be an Uber and Lyft pickup area in the chamber lot. What's happening is Uber and Lyft is something new, and we need to adapt to it. Uber and Lyft wasn't around years ago, but they're here now. It's a good thing because people aren't drunk driving, right? Everyone's taking an Uber everywhere. But the Uber drivers just stop wherever they want. They're going to cause an accident. People are falling off the sidewalk. If you go to like an airport, you have to go to a certain area to get picked up. And I think that we have that area. We just need to utilize it. Simple phone call to Uber or Lyft. They designate it. It's over. One other thing is there's a lot of people walking around, more so than ever. I see more trash around town. I see some volunteers and people picking it up, but I don't really see more trash cans. I think we could use those because I'm picking up trash. I'm there a lot. And with this growth, I know at one point we visited the parking lot expansion. I think the parking lot should be expanded. Maybe some neighbors might not agree with me, but they probably would be happy if those cars aren't parked in their yard on Miles Street. I remember a couple years ago when the police chief, the old fire chief, Cindy Williams, and the old town administrator were up here trying to campaign for that. There was some flack by the neighbors by that, but I think if a better plan is put together, shows a good buffer zone, we redo the configuration of that parking lot, it's just getting busier and busier. I think one day the town probably will expand on it, but if they come up with a good plan and started getting those wheels in motion, maybe we could have that done by next summer. But the cars, I mean, downtown Harwichport's hopping, which is a good thing for everybody. So I'm just up here to make a couple public comments about that I think if we're proactive and we kind of address that there's more people and we handle it better, that it's going to be safer and better for everybody.
Thank you, Taylor. Joe, is that something that you want to talk to public safety about? I've observed several of the same things down there, and we did purchase all of that equipment for Harwich Center through the grant. We have some of those barrels. The pedestrian crosswalks in Harwichport at night, I drive through there from Chatham, and you really have to be pointing your eyes in every direction because people hop off the sidewalk and walk in front of you. Sometimes on the crosswalk, sometimes not, but it's great to see Harwichport where it is, and I would agree with you. And the lighting down there is horrible. It's completely dark. And then lastly, Joe, I think a call to maybe Sarah Peak or somebody to urge the state to drop the speed limit in Harwichport. I know that's been tried before unsuccessfully, but the speed limit there does not slow down at all. And if you were down there on, it's not just Wednesday nights anymore, it's many nights. The sidewalks are full of people, and it's good to see, but I would agree with Taylor that somebody's gonna get really hurt.
Thank you. Yep, I can follow up with staff, see what we can do in the short term, and certainly some of those more long-term items like legislation or legislative assistance.
Maybe work with the chamber on the Uber and Lyft lane, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jerry Loftus, Jerry with a G. From 2006 until the end of 2013, I was the chair of the Harwich Housing Committee. And during that time, the housing in affordable housing in Harwich had about 90 units were built, not just by Habitat, but by Hetch and the Community Development Corporation. And, you know, my memory is slipping a little bit, but, and now I vacation up here the last week in July. I just celebrated my 88th birthday yesterday, and I usually come down to say hello to the people in Harwich, but the last 3 years of back to 2018 was the last time I was here, and then of course we all had the COVID situation, so we didn't come up, and I thought I would come back up here, and over the years I've been sort of keeping track of what's happening to affordable housing in Harwich, and I have nothing to report because nothing is being built in Harwich. Yes, I know Bob Murray's Way is on the way. It's 6 units, and but before that, there was the 7 units in 2016 on the right field of the high school. There were 7 units built there on the other side of the highway, but since then, nothing. And I keep reading Cape papers and Chatham, Brewster, Dennis, all over the place. Housing, affordable housing is being built. I don't understand what is happening. Privately, I think I know what is happening, but I won't go into that right now. But I'm just sorely disappointed. Harwich was in the lead with affordable housing on the Cape. Now, 0. But you guys probably know more about it than I do, but why it's not happening. I just hope that the tide will shift and we'll get back on the affordable housing wagon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Anyone else for public comment announcement? Joe?
Unless there's anyone else in the audience, Mr. Chairman, I have 3 quick announcements. First, just a reminder, tomorrow, July 26th, that the town will be hosting with KP Law, the open meeting law training session for all boards, commissions, and committees. There's 2 different sessions. 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 p.m. Anyone is interested is still welcome to attend, and the 3 o'clock session will be taped for future use and share with anyone that was not able to make it. Secondly, with regard to our planning for our 2023 annual town meeting, I'm pleased to report that Finance Committee Chair Peter Hughes confirmed last week that the 2 outstanding dates on our key dates, that being the all-day budget hearing, is confirmed with the Finance Committee for Saturday, March 4th, 2023, and that they intend to hold at least one public hearing, and that would be one following on March 9th, 2023. So those dates have been confirmed, and we'll continue our progress towards town meeting, and it's a great help to have the Finance Committee partnering in that regard. And then last but not least, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Friday past marked a solemn occasion, but one that we hope is filled with joy in the future, and that is our longtime Assistant Town Clerk, Paula West, has retired. We certainly wish her the very best, and I would be remiss if I didn't tip the cap, so to speak, for someone who has served nearly 24 years of service for the town of Harwich. So I send, on behalf of the town, and we send our best wishes for a happy, healthy, long retirement, and sincere thanks and gratitude for the efforts that she provided the town over those 23 plus years.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else for public comment announcement? Gone to presentations and public hearings, so we're gonna reopen the public hearing continued from July 11th, 2022 for the stormwater permit application submitted by O'Laughlin Family Realty Trust. Judith A. Lonergan, trustee, as owner for a subdivision located at 16 Squantum Path, 98 North Westgate Road, Assessors Map 78G10. So the public hearing is now reopened. How are you? Come on up, sit down if you want. Joe, do we have the engineer online?
We do. I can see that Kelly's on, and I believe at least one of her colleagues. So they are here from VHB, who, as you recall, is assisting the town with engineering with regard to stormwater requests. And I've been fully prepped by staff and have the binder to potentially answer questions. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Kelly. I do believe we heard that a lot of the outstanding items were actually closed out.
Thank you, Joe. Kelly?
Yes, hi, good evening. We had provided comments, Rovial Water provided a response to our initial comments from the previous town meeting, and I reviewed all those documents and provided additional comments. I spoke with Jay Thrasher and Tim Musnick last Friday on the 21st to discuss those, or sorry, the 22nd, to discuss those comments. We were able to remedy some of them on the phone, and in reviewing their final submittal this morning that they provided to the town, it appeared the remaining comments were addressed. So I have no remaining comments
Thank
for
you.
these plans.
Thank you, Kelly. Questions from the board members? Julie?
So, thank you for being here again this evening, and thank you, Kelly. Can you hear me all right?
Not really, but
Okay.
it's not just you, it's partly me.
All right, so, yeah, I'll pull it. Thank you, Mary. I just want to make, the only point I still have that's outstanding is that this whole monitoring is left to the homeowners association, as I understand it, having read through all the documents. And I appreciate the speed with which you responded to the VHB memo, and it sounds like everything's been satisfied based on the info we've received as well. But that remains my concern, and I guess, I don't know if you can address that at all, but how is that going to be enforced?
You're talking the management side of the road after the road's been done, who's gonna go at the expense of repaving or maintaining down the road, down the
Well, I'm-
life of the time the homes are there? Is that correct?
But, well, when we had you in front of us before, we talked about the fact that through all the documentation and the maintenance on the storm, drains, et cetera, the question was, who's gonna do that? And somebody said, I guess, the town, but we were
That
saying
was
no.
me, because I
Yeah.
made that assumption, that's
Right,
correct.
so it's not gonna be the town, it's a private road, the association, the homeowners will be responsible, but I guess my question there isn't just that, okay, they're gonna be responsible, but how is this gonna happen?
Oh, okay, then I guess you haven't seen, we had our attorney put a document together to form a trust that every homeowner will belong to, and that'll be incorporated into when they buy the property.
Finish talking from the table, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Camera's on you at the table.
So,
A trust is being created that every homeowner who buys one of those lots, has a house, they are taking the responsibility on of the cost of maintaining the structures and the road, the whole thing.
so, and I appreciate that, but I can speak from my own experience, having bought in a place that had a homeowners association, a lot of people not even being familiar with the covenants or the trust. And the only other thing about that is, even though you have a homeowners association meeting, people have to pay their dues, you know, and the town has a limitation here because it's a private road, but we have stormwater issues in that they've been identified. I know you're trying to do the right thing, and we as the town are trying to do the right thing. So I just want to make sure that this is maintained in a proper way, and I guess the question is, how do you propose that, other than having it as part of the deed, which obviously you have to, it makes sense, and that's what's in here. But who is going to be your president of your homeowners association, whatever way it rolls down? I guess the question is, how are you gonna make sure that those maintenance issues are being taken care of? Or is there some type of insurance policy that you'll mandate? I know we have that for open space. We carry insurance to cover liability. So I'm wondering if there's another way to incorporate that.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, this is all new to me, so the town used to accept these roads, and I think it's a big mistake not doing so since whenever the town decided back in whatever that time period was. And I don't know how you're working out with the other subdivisions that have been created since then. Why is this coming to light on this project here now? Would something come up that it would help make me aware of what's going on, or is there an issue someplace, or is just this a question being established with this one particular
Well,
project?
because I believe you're here because your stormwater permit is mandated. Not every subdivision has to have a stormwater.
Well, this
permit.
is,
I don't believe, because you've got wetlands.
No, we don't have wetlands.
Well,
Part of the reason, if I can answer it, part of the reason that this is coming to light is all of a sudden the Board of Selectmen are your stormwater people because of a lack of a planner right now. And then I could also just say that we have a sharper board member than maybe in the past. But
Yeah,
it's, this is only the second stormwater permit the board's done since I've been on it in 8 years. So it is just, and now there's new DEP rules and new stormwater rules, and we're paying very close attention.
okay, so,
So we're not picking on you yet.
all right. Well, it is all new to me, and it's all new to a lot of the engineers around here, because it's just something, I guess you had an engineer, he made a proposal to the selectmen. Now, why he brought it to the selectmen, not through the engineering department, to the planning board, who's in control of, because we have to do basically a drainage system plan, and the only thing this additional stormwater management plan changed on that engineering plan is basically, which is a good thing, they are making them go into tanks first. In case something ever does happen, it gets that possibility of trapping in the tank before it gets directly dumped into the leaching side. Now, other than that, I think it's a good idea, but why can't that be included when we're doing the subdivision on the engineering side and not on the secondary, coming now before your board, having another review done? I didn't create the law, I'm just trying to fulfill my obligation to it. And so why you decided this project was gonna be a second stormwater management project, I have no idea. I was told we had to do it, so we did that. We hired an engineer that specialized in that type of work, and we went forward with it.
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not the second stormwater project to come before the board. Nor would it be different if the position of town engineer were presently occupied. Kelly Siri and her group from VHB fill that role adequately, and more than adequately, very successfully and professionally. So whether it's the town engineer working in town hall or an engineering firm working on behalf of the town, the Board of Selectmen still remain the stormwater authority. And that's because of the regulations that were put in, I believe, 4 years ago, and that were finalized by our former town engineer. This is not the second one to come before the board. I believe this is the fifth one to come before the board. It's the second consecutive one where the board has questions of this nature, but the 3 other ones came before the board with the engineer making suggestions to you as Kelly and her team are making suggestions to you. And last but not least, this is all being done because of DEP's changes and MS4 requirements through the state and EPA.
Okay, back to Julie.
So
And,
I'm not trying to
please.
give you a hard time. I'm just trying to make sure, you know, and again, this is the second one I've been involved in, and I had similar questions for the previous, and not to interrupt you, Richard, you called to you, but to be clear, to the chair's point too, we're not trying to pick on you.
No,
We're-
no, I
what-
understand.
You know, and so the requirements are such by DEP, and so it's the board's job to make sure that overall we're protecting our town's water, as you just indicated. So that's the reason for my question, and so everything seems to be satisfied. I am just saying, in this scenario, on the other stormwater permit that we talked about, there was even different review that would go on at the planning board level for those lots. Yours is a little different, you're gonna be done here, and I'm just saying, how are you gonna coordinate that? But that is ultimately up to you guys to figure out, because we can't mandate that technically, but,
That's why we asked an attorney has some kind, we assume, some expertise. We just go from.
yeah, and that's
one
this,
to another.
I get that, and I'm not trying to give you a hard time on that. I guess in general, I'm just saying, whatever way you can make sure that all those homeowners, because I know how it goes, right? People
Okay.
buy lots, they don't even understand, and Richard can speak to this better, but they don't always understand what they're buying into. And all I'm saying is, when your homeowners association is formed and you've got people living there, you all are responsible for making sure that homeowners association, that this type of maintenance is being done, because we read with a lot of detail what needed to be done to maintain these, which is what brought my question up of who's overseeing this? And that's really the only place I'm coming from. So I'm good.
Richard.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Powers. Mr. O'Laughlin is a great caretaker of much property in this community. But what's been happening of late with these situations with the private roads, a lot of the banks, a lot of the attorneys will not close any longer. And this is a suggestion to you, Mr. O'Laughlin, without a road maintenance agreement, which is tied in with the homeowners association, stating that these things have to be done on a yearly basis. There's a cost that goes with the homeowners association to do so. So that, I don't know if Mr. O'Laughlin is keeping all of these lots in building or if he's going to be selling them off. But a road maintenance agreement must be done before many of the banks, many of the attorneys will close on a private road.
Thank you, Mr. Wakestow. Don Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to tie in with what Richard said and what Julie said, first of all, the planning board does not have the authority to take a road or to assume responsibility on the part of the town for things that are on that road. So just to be clear, whatever you thought was happening wasn't happening. They don't have that kind of authority. Secondarily, it's because there's the engineering and there's the responsibility. We elected to take the route we took because there was no public purpose. There were tons of these private roads happening, but they were largely cul-de-sacs, and we were responsible in perpetuity for paving them, for plowing them, and they didn't serve a public purpose that became a road grid of some sort that got people around. And when Larry was on that board, they made a decision, enough. We can't do this anymore because the cost is accruing every single year when we're taking these properties. And this is when subdivisions were made with the assumption that they would be private. So you can't make that assumption anymore. If it's a private road when it starts, it's going to be a private road unless something really big happens.
Well, I wasn't looking to make it a private road. I was more than happy to meet all your standards like we have in the past, and say, here, we met your standards, you know, we're asking you to take it. And that used to be done.
That's not going to happen. And,
I understand
the remediation for stormwater runoff came from a higher place, not quite there, but the state. And the state mandated that this happen. So those are in addition to anything else that you ever saw before. And those are obligations that accrue to people who buy onto those private properties. They're going to be permanently their responsibility.
Larry,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Larry.
No, I don't have much more to add. I think you've all said that the MS4 has been a project throughout town. We spent a considerable amount of money putting a plan together, just not for your development, but all our storm drains through town. So you fall into that, and we have to comply with it.
Mary.
I'm all set. I applaud Julie's knowledge of this area.
Anyone in the public wish to speak on this? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any more specific questions from the board on the drainage or on what we came back for?
No, none.
Can I get a motion?
Can I get a clarification first?
Sure.
That document you have, you are asserting is going to be part of every single closing, and it's going to be part of the deeds then filed with the Registry of Deeds.
As best as I can understand that document myself, and I'm not an attorney, I think the answer is yes.
It's a declaration of trust, it
Okay.
will have to be.
That's all I need to know.
You want to look at it?
Yeah.
You want to see it?
Okay, can I get a motion?
Well, yes, I'm going to, at least for discussion points, I move we approve the stormwater permit, application permit submitted by the Lawson Family Realty Trust, Judith A. Lonergan, treasurer, as owner for the subdivision located at 16 Squatum Path, 98 North Westgate Road, Assessors Map 78G10.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Any questions?
Can I ask
No.
one question?
Go ahead.
To Richard Waystack's point earlier, I guess the question is, are you having a bank finance this project so that may be part of your requirements?
You talking to Richard
To
or me?
you. I'm saying, based on Richard Waystack's comments earlier about the bank and what they're normally requiring, are you financing this project? Will you be involving a bank?
When the time and place comes to someone to purchase that property from us, that's when a bank will be involved.
Okay, so you,
But until then,
Okay.
no.
okay, so it'll
We're
be
the-
at that
We were
point?
the ones that'll have to maintain it.
Yeah,
And it's mostly the only maintenance, it's minimal maintenance on those basically tanks.
yeah, just wondering, I'm just asking that question. So that's fine, I mean, at some point, there will be a bank involved, and I think we can probably rely on what Richard's relayed.
Joe, any questions?
Nope.
There was a memo in the packet that stated ultimately that with notice that you will allow us to inspect it to make sure that they're being done. And I'm comfortable with that. It's who's gonna go out and inspect it, I guess that's through.
Julie.
Through. My only question for you, is where it comes out on North Westgate. So
Okay.
where the road comes down onto North Westgate. Across the street from that traditionally has been a pond at several times of the year. I imagine the cloth and the hay bales and stuff that we talked about, but during construction, is there extra measures being taken to make sure none of that water comes off that hill into, I think the town fixed the pond. but I-
Well, when the town upgraded their drainage on North Westgate Road, they wanted to make sure, because they designed, when they decided on how much drainage they needed to put in, they didn't want any of these roads that weren't public dumping into their drainage system. So when they came around that curve, they picked up that area by the road,
I can't remember the name.
yeah, I can't either, but
Yeah.
the Walkers live right
Says they're
there.
responsible for
And
doing work.
they're very upset with what we're doing too, for the same reason. But Macy, their problem is their own road system coming down, and when the town picked up the road to stop the road their roads from draining out into the new catch basin. It hits their driveway, and they're the lowest point, and they have to sit there and pump it out down to the drainage basin.
So my question though is,
Okay.
you're taking extra efforts to make sure no water's gonna come out
Right,
of your
we-
hill
yeah.
into that road.
It's all, that's normal standards now.
Okay.
Even when you clear a lot, you gotta create an apron now to take care of the water and the effluent moving. Not I shouldn't use the word effluent,
We don't
but
use
the
that
water.
Runoff,
You gotta be careful, and something trades here back and forth.
runoff would be better.
Thank you,
We have too
thank
many
you. Don,
hats.
any further questions? Larry, you're all set?
I'm sorry.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion on the consent agenda.
I move we vote to approve the Assistant Town Administrator's recommendation to grant permission by Verizon New England Incorporated and Enstar Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for the purpose of placing one jointly owned pole, 67/53.25 at 195 Queen Anne Road to provide service to 195 Queen Anne Road, and B, to approve the following Board of Selectmen meeting minutes: March 21st, 2022, April 4th, 2022, April 25th, 2022, May 9th, 2022, and May 16th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. On to new business B, I would take a motion on that.
B?
B, yeah, we're skipping A.
I move that we approve the one-day entertainment license as presented by Christ Episcopal Church, 671 Route 28, for August 21st, 2022, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. outside with recorded live music and amplification.
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. C is you, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening, and first, excuse me, let me offer my deepest apologies for being completely unawares that I was suggesting a date that impacts upon Jewish high holidays, meaning the end of Rosh Hashanah on September 26th. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have reached out to the town moderator and to the town clerk, and if there is agreement, we could move the special town meeting with further discussion, of course, to the next evening, Tuesday, September 27th, which does not impact upon any religious requirements or observances, and has us having a moderator and town clerk available.
Do you want to, so the first item was to discuss the proposed draft articles. Do you want us to take an action on what you just said, D?
So, to that end, there were two items that we know, excuse me, that would require or necessitate a special town meeting. I think in both instances, they are, one is very good news and the other one is positive progress. So, as we now know, the Monomoy Regional School District Agreement, the amendments, especially relative to the assessment process, have been approved by the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education, and for the town of Harwich specifically, within fiscal year 2023, of which we're in, that causes, for lack of a better word, a surplus. And as you know, that surplus is over $700,000, and so we may need to rely upon actions at town meeting that I will work with the finance director on to dispatch that surplus, so that when you then go to set your tax rate later in the fall, that's not looming large over the equation. Secondly, as you'll hear from our wastewater superintendent in the coming weeks, there's a number of actions that he would like to have town meeting take regarding Phase 3 of our comprehensive wastewater management plan. And specifically, as you'll see in my memorandum, there is a draft article related to the acquisition of property interests and appropriation of funds relative to Phase 3 that may impact upon purchasing private property or acquiring private property easements for pump stations and things of that nature. So first, given that we're 64 days out from September 27th, there's a desire for to get a sense of the board if you believe we should proceed to a special town meeting on that date, and if so, I can work with staff to further these articles that are necessary for that.
Would it be your recommendation to have a fall town meeting?
It is at this point, again, it's not expected to be a wide or encompassing special town meeting, but to really help us get our books in order because of unforeseen surpluses and take necessary next steps to keep the progress moving on our wastewater comprehensive plan.
Julie?
Well, I think if Joe's recommendation is that we move forward with that, I think we should listen to that, and I can understand why you would want that, so.
Mary?
No, I think we should go ahead.
Don?
Yeah, there's some underlying reasons for the wastewater, too. Joe is in possession of, and so is Dan, of the next round of the Clean Waters rankings for us, and anything that gets us closer to a credible shovel-ready something or other puts us more solidly in position. We've already got more than $1 million out of this, and the whole point of this is we have to show that we're making credible progress and that there's something really there for them to fund. So the SRF funding really is contingent on this.
Larry?
I agree with that. It's basically, is there, well, let me catch up with Joe here in a second.
Joe, this question's for you.
Sorry.
Is there any room to add additional, to refer to Don's comments and others? Is there any room to add additional articles as we move forward? What's the closing date on this?
So the closing date, generally speaking, is 35 days before, so we have time.
We have,
Again, we're.
something comes up.
Correct. And the mindset that I've talked to staff about is that if there is this special town meeting, it's meant to address current year fiscal surplus that may exist relating impact upon the tax rate and anything related to wastewater. So things of that nature, I think, fall within that. Having said that, it's your warrant, and I'll certainly take direction from you folks if there's other items that you think are absolutely critical to put on the warrant for that.
But it's really supposed to be dedicated towards a few things and not looking to have a broad bunch of articles.
Correct.
And a very late night.
Correct.
Go ahead.
And I fully agree with that. The reason I ask is we follow up Don's comments. Also, the Pleasant Bay Alliance is finalizing their 4th year review. And listening to that discussion this morning, I think we're all set. But if there's anything that comes up we might need to finalize that, I just want to be sure we have the capability of doing so.
Okay. You have your direction.
Thank you. I would ask, though, under item D, that the board does vote to hold a special town meeting on Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. And perhaps you could say something like no earlier than 6 p.m. or whatever time you want. But then I can inform formally the town clerk that you'll be progressing towards a special town meeting.
Do you have a time that you'd like to see this start?
I'm partial to 6 p.m., but I would defer to anyone else if they had any other date, time.
Is there a motion pending from someone?
Sure, I move that we authorize the town administrator to schedule a special town meeting for September 27th of '22, starting no earlier than, well, I'm going to have a short meeting. Earlier than 6 o'clock, 6 p.m.
Okay, moved and seconded by Don. Moved by Larry, seconded by Don. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
5-0.
I did that last
Discussion on Cape and Vineyard Electric Co-op, CVEC appointment. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. We still have no representative on CVEC, and this is more of an advertising plea, I think, unless any board member or the interview committee has somebody in mind.
No, I agree, it's an advertising plea, because this is an important position for us with all the changes going on, and we want to be sure ideal world, we'd have a number of candidates, so we're sure we have the most qualified candidate.
Thoughts, Mary? Comments?
No, just I hope somebody out there has some interest and will send in the form.
Julie?
Agreed. Feel the same way as Mary.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so the folks out there understand, the whole point of CVEC was we created it as an organization to facilitate what the towns wanted to do and also make sure that we were kind of shielded from liabilities. But whoever gets this position is really representing us at CVEC And it's a real, as Larry said, it's a very important position. And if everybody understands that that's what's going on, like photovoltaic cells, whatever it is, it has to be what the town wants, and they bring that to CVEC, and they represent our position. So we're looking for somebody who's willing to do that.
Leo did a great job on that. If we
did.
could all call him individually a couple times a week, it might go somewhere.
Maybe we all call the radio station where he's on.
Can I get a motion on F? I think we can do them together, too.
Move to approve the following conservation restriction projects: Robbins Pond Preservation Project, 1550 Factory Road, and Hinckley's Pond Herring River Conservation Project, 1 Pleasant Lake Avenue.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Comments or questions from the board? All set? Michael, do you want to say anything? It doesn't sound like you have to.
No.
Okay, all in
Stay
favor?
quiet when you don't have to talk.
Aye.
Okay, come on up.
One point of clarification.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. Michael Locke, Executive Director of the nonprofit Harwich Conservation Trust. Virtually with us is Mark Robinson, Executive Director of the Compact Cape Cod Conservation Trust, our nonprofit partner in these conservation restriction-related projects. Just by way of quick background, each of these projects undertaken by Harwich Conservation Trust, no cost to town taxpayers, but involving state grant funds. And to qualify for those state grant funds, an overlay protection needs to be placed on the property. Each property, which will be held in ownership by Harwich Conservation Trust, and the conservation restriction in each case to be held by Arenda Wildlife Land Trust Incorporated, another nonprofit partner. The second conservation restriction on your agenda, the Hinckley's Pond Herring River Headwaters Conservation Restriction, the grantor will actually be the Harwich Conservation Trust, similar to the first conservation restriction, Robbins Pond Conservation Restriction. Just a point of clarification, since the ownership has transferred to Harwich Conservation Trust for both properties. Thank you for your review. Glad to answer any questions, and we appreciate this ongoing partnership with the town to help preserve these watershed properties.
But Robbins Pond is quite a property, great property.
Yeah, it is.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you all very much.
Mark.
Thank you.
All right. Could I get a motion on G?
Michael, can we make this as one
You
for
can,
both?
yes.
I move we approve the following appoint the following committee members from alternate member to full member. James Walpole, Waterways Committee, term to expire June 30, 2025. David Nunley, Board of Appeals, term to expire June 30, 2025.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Further, I move vote to reappoint the following designees to the Community Preservation Committee. John Ketchum, he's the appointee from the Conservation Commission, term to expire June 30, 2025. Mary Maslowski, she's the nominee from the Planning Board, her term to expire June 30, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Don?
Yeah, this is just a generic discussion. I've had this kind of with Larry, and just, this is more for the public. The CPC committee has been a kind of daunting thing to staff. We got off the beam somewhere about 4 or 5 years ago with staff. We found that there weren't staggered terms, that there were many people serving without their underlying appointment. Some of them weren't even sworn into the underlying committees, or their appointment exceeded the committee because their appointment, say, to the planning board expired in 2 years, but they were given a 3-year appointment. I want to assure everybody that no one has ever, and Larry and I have discussed this, no one has ever been edited out by the interview committee to not go straight to the Board of Selectmen, but the Board of Selectmen still has the right to either confirm or not confirm a particular candidate based on the committee's recommendation, and there has to be a recommendation from them. The one thing that continues to be a problem, and I don't know how to solve it, if you look at what was in the packet, is it puts a heck of a burden on Ellen, and it continues to put a heck of a burden on Ellen, or whoever occupies that position, Because every year they have to make sure that somebody didn't wind up timing out on the Conservation Commission or whatever, but they still have, and there were people who asserted that, no, I'm still on the CPC though. And no, they're not, because you absolutely have to have the underlying appointment to some other committee to be ex officio with that. I don't know how you handle it, but I do want to make sure that everybody on the board knows that it's a real challenge. I mean, we were going year to year, and that was the reason why, because we had to actually figure out who was really on what boards and whether they still were appointed and whether they were actually recommended. But Ellen was ready to take the next step, and obviously she is. So that's great. But somewhere along the line, we got to figure out a mechanism that coincides how these appointments are made with how the other expiration dates occur within the regular boards, because it's really daunting, and it can go bad really fast.
I think we definitely have the right person on the job right now, because
Oh, she's terrific.
Ellen assured me that if we
Terrific.
voted yes on everything tonight, that she was finished with organizing the committee. So,
How did she mean that?
that she's, I think she has us back on track, and it sounds like
She does.
she's working with the clerk's office about digitizing some of this, which should be a better tracking mechanism than paper and a file.
I just wanted everybody to be aware of what the challenge was.
Just a thought, could we have the chair of the CPC keep an eye on that? He knows when somebody goes off that committee.
Yeah, they changed too. And even with goodwill, that hasn't
Yeah.
worked.
Okay.
Did we vote on this already?
We didn't.
You did not.
We did not?
didn't.
No, moved in
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Discussion on appointing a designee to the Community Preservation Committee.
That was it.
So,
That
Mr.
was it, okay.
Chairman,
We
if I-
still need somebody that's
We
willing.
need a nominee.
We need a nominee for the whole board. That would be our nominee.
Joe?
That's correct. Under Chapter 58 of the bylaws, subsection A, Clause 8 indicates that there are to be two members to be appointed by the board, not appointed of the board. You have one appointee on CPC. You have a vacancy in your other designee. So you do need to,
So does anyone
Find
have
someone to
anyone in
serve.
mind, or is this an advertising?
This is an
advertising.
advertisement at the moment, an appeal.
So you have no applicants, Larry?
Was it Carol Ridley?
None?
Carol Ridley's the other one that we have?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Ellen brought it to our attention, that's how on it
That's how
she
we
is,
know.
so, yeah.
So we need to maybe get the vacancy list put on the next agenda as well.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, Ellen knew you'd say that. She said it'll be ready for next meeting.
Thank you.
She's on top.
If board members have anyone they think, reach out to them and ask them. Okay, approve the appointment of Julie Weedis as Council on Aging Director. We need a motion on this?
Can I
Go ahead.
make a comment first? This has absolutely nothing to do with her, has absolutely nothing to do with Joe, but it has absolutely everything to do with the process. I've said this, 5, 6 years ago, that when we're making an appointment that requires our confirmation, I don't know how you could dispose of your duties without knowing, as opposed to who else might have applied, and somebody might not have applied. But it really is incumbent upon us to know the options, or what could have been the options, in order for us to make a knowledgeable confirmation.
Do you want that by way of a memo from the town administrator?
Yeah, and it could have been in the packet confidentially. I don't really care, as long as we know that this person is the absolute best, that you're recommending. These other people applied, but I'm still recommending this. And it could be that that doesn't happen, because we have other situations where we have elevated people, like the deputy chief of the fire department, where there weren't any other candidates. We just decided to opt to promote. But it's not current. Michael sat with me and heard me say this years ago. It's a position I've always taken. If you're going to exercise your authority under the charter, the only way for you to know what you're confirming is for you to know everybody who might have applied, so that you can make a knowledgeable decision.
Thank you, Don. Joe?
So the only concern about that, well, first, two concerns. I heard Selectman Howell, but I want to put it out there. The discussion we're having right now is separate and distinct from the individual that I'm appointing to the position of Council on Aging Director, and rather it's a general topic about the process. To that, I would have no objection whatsoever at a future meeting and in depth with the board. However, as your Chief Personnel Administrator operating under Chapter 4 of the Charter that requires me to make these appointments, I also have to be bound by state law. And there is a fine line we need to be careful on, where if I indicate that this is the finalist that I'm bringing to you, but these other folks made it to a certain level, then they could be exposed unfairly as finalists. In other words, if somebody is a finalist, their name must be made public. If they are not a finalist, they understand they enjoy the right of anonymity. So I do not disagree with anything that was said, and I'd be more than happy to revisit this at a board meeting to talk about a process that would honor what the board's looking for, but not impacting on private citizens who do not want their name made public if they're not going to be the candidate of choice.
Makes sense.
All I ask.
Makes sense. Joe, do you want to say any words about this appointment? This was an internal hire, so do you want to say a few words?
I do, and I will read lightly from my memorandum in your packet, which I stand by. But one of the things beyond Julie's exceptional background, having someone who has earned, and I know what that means, has earned not one but two master's degrees, both of which apply directly to the position, one related to public health and one related to social work. Beyond that, Julie and this appointment is one that I'm particularly proud of because Julie has now demonstrated what I've talked about for the whole time I've been here in Harwich, and that is for Harwich to be an employer of choice. She was first identified by our previous Council on Aging Director to enter our organization as a program specialist, was then promoted at the recommendation of the COA Director to the position of Social Services Coordinator right after that, so 2 years ago. And now, she takes the next step in her career, which I think speaks well of her, but also speaks well of our organization, that we can demonstrate that these are positions that show growth within the department and growth within the organization. And I am eminently confident that Julie will be able to pick up, not that anyone can fill Emily's shoes per se, but certainly pick up and lead the organization that Emily has done such a great job of revitalizing and bringing into the 21st century. So to me, this is just, as you've heard me say many times, narratives. There's a lot of great narratives around this appointment, and I certainly do respectfully ask that you affirm the appointment.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move that we ratify the town administrator's recommendation for Julie Wittes as the Council of Aging Director.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Only emphasize that our role at this point is exactly that, to ratify the appointment made by the administrator. So that's perfect.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
Joe, do you want to?
So very quickly, Mr. Chairman, this next item, as you may know, our water wastewater superintendent has been working on a project for at least 2 years now, of which I've been a part, to identify parcels of land that abut or are adjacent to our public water supplies, and to finalize this and to emphasize to the taxpayers that there's no taxpayer money being used. The town wants to rely upon mitigation funds that are available from Barnstable County. It's approved, it's allowed. However, both parties have to come to an agreement, and normally we rely upon our council, but in this instance, our council is the county's council. So to let them do that, you, the board, must authorize that you have no objection to KP Law representing both parties. And I would say, given the savings that are involved and no taxpayer money, I would urge you to do exactly that, so that we keep our costs very low and Dan can rely upon these funds to acquire these properties around our public water supply, thereby keeping it safe.
Thank you. Motion?
I'm just trying to figure out the language here. We,
I'm not going to motion that.
I move to approve KP Law request of determination consent pursuant to Massachusetts Rules of Professional Conduct regarding the use of, allowing KP to counsel of both Barnstable County and the Harwich, town of Harwich.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Don?
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for it on principle because I felt the same way with DHY too. You cannot ever be totally aligned when you're representing two different sets of clients. The whole point of having two lawyers is to make sure that your lawyer is absolutely 100% representing you in all instances. And generically, I just won't do it.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor? Oh, go ahead, Mary.
That was my same concern, Joe, but I'd just like to hear you is there any, I know you can't, crystal ball into the future, but do you see anywhere where there could be a conflict, or is this more pro forma?
So in this instance only, I would say that it is pro forma, because what we're talking about is a memorandum of agreement between two municipal groups, one being Barnstable County, the other being the town, and for the use of county mitigation funds that we have the right to use. We need their permission to use it. They agree. They, as we always want, they, codify with a legal document. And again, in this instance, given the cost savings that we had, really the only other choice would be for the town to object to Barnstable County and say, no, you get another lawyer. And so to me, it's impractical in this instance only. And I would never say that beyond this instance.
Great, thank you.
And I knew Don was going to say that because he had concerns before. But I read the way Joe did. This is very specific.
At least I'm
And they can
consistent.
bail out, so.
Well, I agree with you.
I
On
think we
DHY,
should
I
mind it.
couldn't agree more. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
4-1.
Mr. Chairman, as mentioned under old business, I know that you and the board were contemplating either revising or restoring your original remote participation policy. Bless you.
Thank you.
And as I've been working on that issue, I did ask for some time because we expected that there may be legislation passed. Well, as expected, on Saturday, July 16th, Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, acting as governor in the absence of Governor Baker, signed into law a joint bill that extends remote meeting participation for local boards, and I believe it does so through March 31st of next year. That was necessary because if this board was going to take any action, we wanted to see what effect the legislation would have. And I can tell you that the legislation that I have been hearing through the Managers Association and other groups is not the legislation that was signed, which is helpful. The initial legislation that was proposed would have caused severe unfunded mandates to municipalities. Having said all that, there is now a law in the Commonwealth that extends remote meetings for local boards through March 31st of 2023. That may not, however, have any effect on what the board may want to do for your remote participation, and that would be members of public bodies rather than the public. And so really that would just be my next question, is what, if any, action would the board like me to work on regarding remote access to meetings versus remote participation at public meetings, if anything?
Don?
I don't know.
Larry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I have nothing short to answer on that. I think my longer discussion is not, I don't want to make it now, but I'm not sure we have the technology always available to do the participation remotely in a committee itself. I think we do okay with participation from Zoom outside the committee. But to have someone call in, to hear the discussions going on, so that may be a budget issue going forward at some point. We're interested on how do we allow people to, committee members to participate is a more difficult technology, I think.
Joe?
And then, thank you for that, Selectman Ballantyne, because building off of that, I also want to emphasize that nothing that the town of Harwich is doing or has been doing since July 6th of 2020 runs contrary to any laws. In other words, the way that you're operating is well within the law as you've chosen to operate, and I do agree that If we're looking at a technology aspect of it, you know, let's try to build something in the budget if that's the way we want to go. Having said that, we do expect Office 365 to help to some large degree in that regard. But nothing that you're doing runs contrary to any law, including the new law that was signed last week.
Julie?
Well, to Larry's point about technology, and if we are able to move to Office, well, we are going to move to that. I guess the one question I have is, GoToMeeting is not always so friendly. And so, is there any ability, and I don't know, maybe it's a cost issue, to move to Zoom? Because I just think overall it works better.
People are more
It's
familiar with it.
Yeah, and it's more user-friendly. We've had issues, you know, and Matt can speak to this. I've been dialing into different meetings, and sometimes the public's having a hard time hearing, or we can hear, but they can't hear here. So that's a problem.
Joe?
So I'm champing at the bit to respond. First of all, and I mean this with all due respect, that was the understatement of the year with regard to GoToMeeting, so no argument there. And I will say this in all honesty, that in March and April of 2020, there was nothing better than GoToMeeting because Zoom was being hacked. In May of 2020, Zoom changed that, and they were no longer worse than GoToMeeting. We're now reverting back to, we're in the freeware version of GoToMeeting, so it is a cost, but it's nothing that's insurmountable that we couldn't do either in present year, fiscal year '23, or for '24. So we do, and we know that the marketplace, so to speak, over the last 2 years has really reshaped itself. So bigger and better on the way.
Thank you.
Mary?
Wasn't part of the reason we wanted to talk about this, there was some limitation on the number of people that can be remote, and I thought we were gonna try to change that and put that in control of the committee chair? It was,
I tell you, my only thing that I talked about was not having public hearings with remote participation, because
absolutely.
the circus that was created over one of the hearings from one of the establishments in Harwichport is something I don't care to ever relive. Where, you know, there was invitations sent, fake names, signs being held up. So for me, Joe, when I asked you about it, it was really to have a board have a policy not to allow for remote participation on hearings. As far as the rest of it goes, I can live with that. But, Mary, I'm not sure about the numbers part of it other than that.
Okay. Maybe that, I think it was the finance committee that had whatever number are allowed, there was gonna be an overlap of like one meeting where
Yes.
only two can be missing, and there was gonna be one meeting that three were missing. I mean, I just think the
Yeah.
chair of a committee can call that.
Yeah. Joe?
So to that point then, absent any other policy, it's my understanding that you're operating on your original pre-COVID remote participation policy. And that matched with the open meeting law prior to COVID, and it said that the chair could not participate remotely and be the chair, and that a quorum still had to be present. So those matters are still in play based on your policy, because the new law gives you broader opportunities where you could say, we're not worried about 4 out of 5 members participating remotely. So that's the other part of it, that if you want to, excuse me, if you want to resume what you were doing prior to March of 2020, then you have to factor in the chair, the quorum, et cetera. If you want to do something different, the legislation that was signed into law assists that, and further, to the question of public hearings and participants and all that, to Selectman Kavanaugh's point, there are better applications out there where, and not to advertise for any one of them, but I do believe Zoom is a platform that's been used by representative town meeting towns, so multiple hundred people, and I believe other communities have used it for general community meetings. And the bandwidth is there, but there's none of the interruption, because there's more control through that platform.
Julie?
I could just say that, you know, in my job, what we do, we often see still some towns that are only having online hearings. You know, Conservation in Truro, for example, were online, and I believe will remain online only, and those are public hearings. So I don't really see an issue with public hearings, though though Chair, I do understand that your concerns about the other kind of shenanigans that can go on. I think you have to be careful, because if you say one group can't have a, remote public meeting, but other groups are having them, zoning board of appeals, conservation, health, et cetera. So I think we need to be uniform in the approach.
You had to be there.
Yeah.
Mary?
Should we have Joe look at what those pre-COVID
Yes.
rules were and maybe come up with something that we can start a conversation on this?
Yes. Anything else?
No.
Can I get a motion on old business B?
I move that we designate the finance director / town accountant as the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA reporter relative to the Barnstable County ARPA application portal, and that would be a replacement for Megan Outridge.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Town administrator's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, some contracts to update you on. First, working through the fire chief, and as you may recall, that the town was seeking, or funding was secured in 2021 annual town meeting to cover the cost of radio upgrades. And the chief is informing us that the grant fund was amended so that the town through the fire department was able to secure a federal grant to cover 95% of the radio upgrade costs. Therefore, the town only needs to expend just under $17,000 for a purchase that was just over $220,000. And so we've worked through that procurement, and those radios have been acquired. Again, incredible significant savings to the town, whereby items that were looking to be close to $250,000 cost the town less than $20,000.
Great.
And then, next item, Mr. Chairman.
Before we go on,
Go ahead, Don.
just briefly, before we go on, I want, again, underscore to the public, this is not a one-off situation. I don't care who it's been in the fire department through the years, whether it's been Craig or the current chief or prior personnel. These guys consistently try to find opportunities to save the town money and yet still upgrade their facilities. And people need to know that that this is a continuing cultural thing in their organization.
Thank you, Don. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. And then the contract was awarded, and I apologize, I need to correct one thing. Additionally, based on the amendment, the town was able to get some additional related equipment. The overall cost then did go up to $47,000. But again, that's because of the savings that was achieved, and it ties back into the overall effect of getting security and safe radios. The award was granted to Motorola Mobile radio and portable equipment. Next one is, there was a Cape Cod Commission grant that the town was eligible for, working through the Community Center, Carolyn Carey, and the Rec Department. The town was able to receive a bicycle parking equipment program grant, and we're gonna have bicycle racks at additional places, including Red River Beach, Earl Road Beach, Bank Street Beach, and Pleasant Bay Beach. And that, again, was all made possible by grants achieved by staff.
Great job.
And
Just a comment on that, I agree, great job. I was surprised how expensive bicycle racks are.
yes, absolutely.
Only on municipal bids. Mary, go ahead.
Just one question, Joe. Is that at no cost? Does the grant pay completely for that?
I believe they did, I believe it
I
did.
couldn't tell looking at the, so I was assuming it was zero cost to us.
I believe that is the case. I'm
Yeah.
just going through it now. Again, because of the grant through the Cape Cod Commission.
Yeah, that's great.
And then last but not least, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you may be aware, tomorrow, Tuesday, July 27th, I know I'll be joining our Harbor Master, John Rondone, for a dredging award, of which Harwich, Chatham, and several other towns on Cape Cod will be announced as recipients of tomorrow, which is fantastic. And kudos to our Harbor Master on that as well, just like with our Community Center Director and our Fire Chief, going after grants that are out there. So it should be a great event, and looking forward to it.
Great.
Thank you. Selectmen's report, Julie?
I attended the Harwich Port Stroll last Wednesday, and it was fantastic, and it was crazy hot and crazy busy. It was an excellent night.
Mary?
Two quick items. One is there was a story in the Chronicle, I think it was this past week, about Orleans looking into what they can do better to manage those Airbnb type rentals. And the thing I found interesting about their approach to it, they want to do it in a way that doesn't impact the person that's living in the house, that's just renting out, 2 rooms over the garage or whatever to supplement their income, but more go after the people that are living off Cape and doing this as a business. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on that. I don't think we need to do anything, but I found it kind of interesting. The other is, you probably all read about the telephone pole in Chatham on a nice sunny day with no wind that came flat down, which reminded me, we had Eversource here a while ago talking about the double poles here in town. I wonder if we could get an update on that. Because I will tell you, when it comes to pole work, the more noise you make, the better they take care of you. And I'd hate to think Chatham is now gonna make a huge amount of noise. I'd like to make sure we're still on the list.
Julie?
So just thanks for bringing that up, Mary, because there's also an issue that I was aware of and it affects a group of homes over in the campground area off of Atlantic Ave, that Eversource and Verizon because there's a transformer issue that needs to be replaced, and those people are constantly losing Wi-Fi. And my understanding is they're all pretty aggravated and they're all calling Eversource, but the process is so slow. So whatever we can do to get an update from them on those kinds of issues, I think is a good idea.
And as you know, I'm happy to help.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Don?
Yeah, I'm a little foggy now about whether the Cape Verdean event. I believe that occurred after our last meeting before this, because we were in 2 weeks intervals. There was a Harwich Cape Verdean Heritage Festival in Brooks Park. They honored Albert Rainio, who just turned 90. What a wonderful guy he is. And Angie Chilaka was there. It was just a really nice day, and it was nice to be able to celebrate our heritage.
Thank you, Don.
Couple things. One is, in addition to the stroll, I was driving back from the airport Tuesday, past the town band. The place was packed. Never seen as many people. Times I've heard them, they're getting better all the time, but they've become quite a crowd. The other comment I'd make, I'm not sure it'll go anywhere, but we heard last meeting about the DEP draft regulations of shortening our CWMP from 40 to 20 years. I don't think we can allow to let that stand without having at least some discussion. Is there any way we can push back on that? Maybe by ourselves, or or at least start a discussion with our fellow Cape Cod towns. Because if you look at, a few years ago, we were saying it was 300 million plus. Now you can play games and do present value and all that to show it's going to be even more than that. And if you go through just a brief look at some of our financial tables that Carol provided before, when we were looking at, 7 or 8 phases at borrowing at 20-year spans, we were still talking roughly $7 to $8 million a year paying off that debt. And not to get too, I don't want to get political, but you have the Supreme Court saying that even regulatory agencies do have some limits. And I'd like to add that as an agenda item, see if there's any discussion we can make on that, because I don't see how, and I know I read in the paper that we're gonna get some money from the state possibly, but they're talking, sounds like big money, $200, $300 million. But, you know, initially, the Cape was discussing over, I don't know, $2 billion through the entire Cape. Put that in perspective, it's not helping. And so we need some, and, you know, we've been moving in good faith. You know, I, of course, personally was very disappointed we couldn't figure out how to work with Dennis and Yarmouth, but nevertheless, we've already spent over $30 million doing what we're doing. I'd like to bring that back for, I know it's maybe a pie in the sky discussion, but I hate to just let it drop.
Yeah. Dan is gonna keep me in the loop on that. Dan and Russ were gonna try and get them before us sooner rather than later. Go ahead.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but I did participate a week ago Thursday in the Cape and Islands Managers and Administrators meetings. And Commissioner Martin Suberg from Mass DEP was there, as well as Millie Garcia Serrano and the group that we're used to dealing with from Mass DEP Southeast Region. And the purpose of that is they've been going around to towns, and I had a great conversation with Ms. Garcia Serrano and her team, where they continue to talk about the first watershed permit that's ever been issued, and they talk about it with some reverence to obviously Pleasant Bay. So to that end, they did say that they would very much like to come before the board. Now, I will say that they're actively reaching out to towns to come before them, and I will say that it's a little bit of a road show. So they're gonna come and present what they think is a very positive thing, and I've told them that I'd love to have them come to Harwich, but they shouldn't expect the same kind of greeting that they may have gotten, say, in Wellfleet or other places where they haven't been as far down the road as we have. Having said that, there is a willingness of Mass DEP to come before the board, so I can certainly expedite that if the board wanted to do it at a regular meeting or a standalone meeting, whatever your preference is.
Regular meeting, and then, it's still being floated. This was not a definite. This is what they were talking about.
So what they're talking about are regulations that would have to change, and that if the regulations change, you go from 40 years to now 20 years on wastewater and nitrogen abatement. Having said that, they probably expect that their proposed regulation will pass. And that's why they're willing to have these conversations ahead of time. But they've also talked about the fact that they're knowledgeable of what's towns on Cape Cod in general, and certainly the town of Harwich has been doing for years on nitrogen abatement. And so I think they know that when they come here, they're gonna have more of a challenging conversation from other towns that, again, haven't gone anywhere near as far as we have. But they are still willing to have the conversations, and they're doing it relative to a bigger hearing that will happen in the fall on those proposed regulatory changes.
Thank you. Don?
To be fair, this is not just changing the years from 40 to 20, because Larry and I discussed this. If you dive a little bit deeper into the document, you start seeing that the number of dwellings that they're talking about is actually, it actually equates to the whole town of Harwich. The only good news in any place there is that they're talking about IAs to a certain degree, where they never were talking about them before. But what they're doing is they're not only halving the amount of time, they're almost doubling the responsibility for what needs to be sewered and remediated. That's insane.
Well, and the first conversation, they still haven't said IAs work.
I get it.
So we're basically talking about sewering the entire town, because why put an IA in to find out 10 years from now it didn't work? Larry, and then we gotta bring this back as an agenda item, because we're getting a little in the weeds.
I guess just to, Joe, I appreciate your comments. My concern is that I'm less interested in the presentation on what they're doing. We can figure that out. I'm trying to figure out and to see if there's a stomach around there, or the Cape, quite frankly, Harwich in general, to push back on this some. And I think that's the internal discussion we have, an agenda item, which is different than hearing their roadshow on. I understand what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can even applaud it. I just don't know how we afford to pay for that in any reasonable fashion.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
We could